Hey everyone, in honor of Earth Day, I want to show off two of the bikes that I have and talk a little bit behind the science of riding them. So the first bike I want to talk about is my triathlon bike. This bike I use if I want to ride fast and if I want to ride far. So a lot of times in triathlon races, they're 15, 20 miles long on the biking portion of it. So I want this bike to go as fast as I can with using the least amount of force. Therefore, it's very light. With just a couple of fingers, I can pick this bike up. The second thing that I wanted to point out is that it has these cool pedals that my shoes actually clip into. So what happens is when I get on the bike, I clip into these shoes, and that allows me to not only pull down on the pedal, but I can also push up on the pedal. So that gives me much more force because not only am I pushing, but I'm also pulling. So I can move the bike faster by doing that. Next thing I want to show off is these tires. Now these tires are very smooth and very thin. They're about as wide as my finger is, and there's almost no tread on them at all. This really decreases the friction that's applied when you ride a bike. And the important part about decreasing the friction is, remember, friction acts against an object to slow it down. So if there's less friction, it will move a little bit faster. It also makes it a little bit more dangerous to ride. If a surface is slippery or if it's uneven, I lose some control of the bike. The next thing I want to talk about is these aero bars. And these aero bars is how I ride. I put my hands like this. And what this does is this decreases the air resistance. Now remember, air resistance is the air slowing an object down. So if I'm sitting upright, there's much more air resistance than if I go and lean forward into these aero bars. So that's my racing bike. Next thing I want to talk about is my mountain bike. And there's a couple things I wanted to point out with this bike. First of all, it's much heavier. The heaviness in this bike gives it much more control. I ride this bike if I'm going on trails or if I'm going on the grass or on the sidewalk. So it's important to have more control in this bike than it is my racing bike. That's going to also make it a little bit harder to move. So this bike won't go as fast. It also has these tires that are much thicker. They're about 3 finger lengths long rather than the 1 finger length of the triathlon bike. And it also has this tread on it. This increases the friction, which means I have more control and I can ride it in more surfaces. This bike also has features like shocks on it. This makes the bike heavier, but I can go through and it absorbs more of the energy if I hit a bump or if I hit like a root or something. So both bikes are enjoyable, but for different reasons. So I hope you enjoyed my quick little bike tour, and happy Earth Day.